So hello and welcome to today's Culture Shifts webinar, how ED&I and HR leaders can work together to improve people processes. My name is Vicky Bars. I'm the Head of Culture Transformation at Culture Shift. I lead our wraparound work on culture and organisational change, including advising our partners on their policies, processes, campaigns around prevention and their response to harm. I also lead our community of practice, helping our partners to learn from one another and problem solve collaboratively. For those that are new to Culture Shift and our online events, we're a tech for good organisation who believe in the future world of work and study that is safe, happy and supportive for everyone, everywhere. Our software and services empower organisations to tackle harassment and bullying of all kinds, allowing leaders to activate positive change in their organisation and maintain the cultures that they want. Culture Shift software currently helps over 90 organisations better protect their people, which gives around 1.9 million people the opportunity to speak up when they've experienced or witnessed something. We help organisations transform the way they listen to their people, how they foster a sense of belonging, the one that we all desire and seek to actively be involved in. We help them to identify, track and address and proactively prevent incidences of bullying, harassment, discrimination and sexual misconduct. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Combo Magara from SafetyCulture, Kate Norton from Praetura, and Justina Omateo from Slaughter and May in the Black Solicitors Network for this really important discussion. Our research at Culture Shift shows that 36% of people say that an incident such as bullying, harassment and discrimination at work has led them to not trusting their employer. That's a huge number. And a further 46% of employees said that their workplace could do more when it comes to diversity. So in this webinar, we'll be discussing the challenges that both HR and EDI teams face when it comes to protecting and supporting their employees and how they can tackle such challenges. Now, we know that equality, diversity and inclusion matters are not just a challenge for HR, but they are a bigger organisational issue. And having EDI within HR functions and others outside of it, everyone organises it differently. And when it comes to looking after a company's business, it's imperative that wherever your EDI organisational strategy is based, it's important you have one. Wherever EDI is placed in the organisation, these things are vital that they are across the function. It's especially important if you want a team that is diverse, productive, inclusive, which is only possible if you invest in having a positive and safe workplace culture. I'm going to go through each of our speakers, asking them to come in on particular questions. And when I introduce each one of them, I'll ask them to say a little bit about their role, as well as answering the question. So first up, we have Kate. Thank you for joining us, Kate. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role, and then we'll move on to a question.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for asking me to be part of this really important webinar this morning. My name's Kate. I am the Group People and Talent Partner for Praetura Group. We're a financial services business based across the Northwest. We have sort of two streams to our business, debt and lending, and also venture capital as well.
Thank you. So your question is around, traditionally, some people often are a little bit apprehensive about turning to HR with their issues. How has Praetura tried to change employees' perspective of that and build trust?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I sort of stuttered on my job title there is because it's recently changed. So that is one of the things that we've done is sort of try and change that perception of HR and create a real people environment. And changing our roles from sort of the traditional HR type job titles to people partners has been part of that journey. It is a real old-fashioned approach when we talk about HR. Is that, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, it's really old-fashioned sort of hire and fire approach when we talk about that traditional side of HR, and we've definitely tried to move away from that. Especially in a finance industry, which can have that sort of old-fashioned traditional concept, which we've really tried to move away from. I think the biggest thing that we've tried to do is connect and really show the human side of HR. And COVID's had a massive impact on that because during those times we were the go-to people, and that's really had a shift across the whole of HR and people departments across all industries. But to sort of further build on that, I think, you know, listening and connecting. We do a lot of engagement groups. We have a task force who we ask to provide us with feedback and how are we doing, and, you know, what are the sorts of things that from a cultural perspective or from a trust perspective, people, you know, want us to be doing. We really go back to the floor. We work with people. We connect across all levels. We're hands-on. We're in and amongst it. There's no office anymore where you're sort of locked away and in a separate room. And we do all of those things to try and create a sense of trust and remove any barriers. I think leading with transparency is hugely important. A lot of the work that we do in HR or people areas is confidential. There's things that we can't talk about, and there's things that are, you know, moving all of the time. But we try to lead with transparency and being as open as we can be where possible, to really try and build that trust with the teams. We have policies that talk about those things. When we first introduced a lot of our people policies, we thought, well, we're a small business. We don't need all of these hundreds of policies. Surely people don't need to know this because we're a small business. And of course we do, you know, we do that, or we support in this area. Of course, we're looking to be more diverse, but, you know, we definitely know now that, you know, as a growing business and a scaling business, we've gone from sort of 60 people to 160 people in the past few years. And we need to be explicit. And people need to know from day one that we are supportive, and that we will help where we can, and that we have every intention to be an inclusive and diverse employer.
Great. Thanks so much, Kate. That's really interesting. I think especially thinking about like those in-person cultural changes that you can make, like not having an office with a closed door, transparency policies. Yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much. So Combo, we're going to come on to you now. Would you like to introduce yourself and your role a little bit before we move on to a question?
Yeah, sure. So I am Combo Magara. I am a senior people partner at SafetyCulture. So SafetyCulture is a tech company that have created a mobile-first workplace platform for frontline staff to be able to use for all kind of their workplace operations. And our kind of mission as an organization is all around safety. So making sure that employees can get home safe, and also making sure that people are enabled to do the best work of their lives, really.
Great, thanks so much. And so, and Kate talked a little bit about the kind of shift to being a people team, and that's something you already have in place. So tell us a bit about your role and how you work as a senior people partner.
Yeah, sure. So it's as exactly as Kate said, in terms of kind of humanizing the role. So when I first joined SafetyCulture in April, it was the first time that they had a in-person people partner within the EMEA team. So the kind of first elements of my role were all about dismantling any fears that a lot of the team had, because it was they're quite junior employees. So for some of them, it was the first time that they had ever worked with HR, and it was getting rid of the kind of stigma of HR Sally or kind of being HR police. And a key element of that for me was just about demonstrating curiosity and appreciation of the culture that they had already created, and talking about kind of their priorities in terms of customers, getting as close to an understanding around their kind of ambitions with customers as well. I spent a lot of time, rather than just having a desk that I was sat at, I spent time shadowing different teams. So spent time just hot desking around the different areas. I did a little bit of a presentation when I first joined to kind of show a little bit about myself, my passions, my interests. So kind of leading with that authenticity was a really important element of that. And then in terms of the role of that senior people partner, it's essentially being the HR business partner. So again, just getting as close to the business as possible, getting as close to the priorities for people as possible, and just demonstrating the value add that the function can have in terms of enabling people to do excellent work, getting rid of the noise as we scale, ensuring that we are safe as an organization, and just considering certain elements of diversity and inclusion that we hadn't necessarily started to explore a little bit more. So yeah, that's been kind of my role here at SafetyCulture.
Great, thank you. I particularly like the fact that, again, this theme around not having an office where it's like HR sat over there, but you're really integrated and they're having conversations with people about, they're like being curious, I think was the term you used, which I, really, really love. And on to Justina, would you like to introduce yourself and your role, and then I'll give you your question.
Thanks, Vicky, and thank you for having me this morning. Morning, everyone. My name is Justina Omatai, and I'm a Diversity and Inclusion Manager at Slaughter & May. For those who aren't aware, Slaughter & May is a leading international law firm. And May last year, the Diversity and Inclusion function moved out of our HR team and sits within what we were a responsible business function. So we were a sub-function of HR, and we were the responsible business. So pro bono community work sat with, and D&I sat within responsible business. We have now become our own function because responsible business and sustainability is obviously of utmost importance to many organizations now. And so my day-to-day job is actually working with HR very closely in terms of our talent management strategies and how we can retain all our people, but particularly those of diverse characteristics, working very closely with our HR systems team, because what we can't measure, we can't manage. And so data is a key piece of all that informs our business case in terms of where we need to make change. And another piece that I work very closely with is our recruitment team. So I would say that we work with our recruitment team, the advisory team, the HR advisory team, the learning and development team. We spend a lot of time with these groups in HR. And I like to say, in short, my job is, I love people, but I recognize that people don't succeed not because of a lack of talent, but sometimes it's because us as an organization recognizing the difference and applying the nuance. Most times we have to work with the dominant group and apply that to fit across all, and not being able to take the bespoke individualities and think about how we need to do things differently. So it's not about people assimilating to a system, but how people can come as their true self and we get the best out of them and how they can thrive in that culture.
Thanks, Justina. And I think I really liked what you said there about like what we can't measure, we can't manage. And I think data-driven work is really imperative here. And obviously HR teams and EDI teams often have a lot of access to information, but how we use it is a vital part of that, really. I would love to delve a little bit more into how you found like moving out of, were you in the HR function before and then now it's a separate function, right? So how have you found it? Have you found that relationship was already good and it's retained, or have you found it's a very different type of relationship with HR now?
Sorry, I think my internet is a bit unstable, but hopefully I can do my bit. So our relationship, actually, it's
No, I think just
been out. That, oh, am I cutting out?
I think you froze a little bit there, but continue and we'll see.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can switch off my camera, if that changes anything.
I can hear you good.
Am I back?
Not visually, but we can hear you well.
Yeah, I switched off my camera just to see if it stabilizes things. So there hasn't been a change since moving from within the HR team to outside. I think what it has provided to the wider business is there's a disconnect between the two, and that is needed, because what we have found is that our people love to speak to the D&I team around HR issues, which is a bit problematic because HR are there for a reason. And whilst we can be a conduit and a good go-between, ultimately, we are encouraging our people to speak to HR. And how do we do that? And why are there those barriers? Sometimes it is due to trust and past experiences, individuals thinking that HR is to support and protect the organization and not necessarily the people. So we have been doing a lot of work to look at how we bring those two together, and we're going out as a unified team. to really support and drive the business.
Thank you very much. So coming back to you, Combo, and following on, I guess, very heavily from that, how have you tried to help both the HR as a centralised shared service team and the EDI team work together, and how can you ensure that they're on the same page? Obviously, like as a people person, you know, you've got the services, you've got the EDI team, like how do you be the conduit between them to be exactly what Justina was saying there about being a unified service?
Yeah, and so it's exactly as you said in terms of kind of that idea of being the conduit. So for me, it's always all been about trying to help embed those EDI projects or HR projects by kind of sharing the insight and making sure that they align with the business's key areas of drivers, pain points, cycles. So for example, at the moment, I support a go-to-market team. So kind of that knowledge of kind of the quarterly pressures and how sort of buy-in for any activities around those crunch points, or when we have particular big deals that are in. It's all about sort of showing that any low uptake might have some cyclical nature that we need to explore, and just kind of sharing that insight as soon as possible with the EDI teams and the HR teams, sharing insight into kind of who are going to be your early adopters, and making sure that I connect those two groups together so that they can get that buy-in, they can kind of explore it with those early adopters as soon as possible, and then start getting them to sort of evangelize around the projects that we're going to be doing. So for example, for us, in terms of gender equality, that's something that's been very important to us from the very beginning. As a tech company, we're really pleased right now to kind of have that 50% split, and it's been due to getting our stakeholders involved as early as possible in terms of the business areas, showing how it links back into kind of the commercial outputs that they are trying to drive in terms of the way that we work with our customers, trying to sort of marry our work as well. So getting the HR teams that we have involved with the HR teams with our customers, or the EDI teams that we have also linked in with our customers ones as well. So it's all about just making sure that everyone's got that commonality in terms of that the end goal, but also making sure that we're considering the different pushbacks and just trying to get rid of as many barriers as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Combo. I really like that as well, thinking about the supply chain. So like what matters to you matters to your customers. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations aspire to do well, but maybe don't always hit the nail on the head. So yeah, thank you for bringing that perspective in there as well. Justina, I'd like to come back to you and ask a question around how do you feel HR can further adopt and implement EDI strategies in the work that they do to help improve employee experience? For example, ways of reporting your firm currently uses, or any surveys or anything like that. Like what are the big tasks that you're driving, but you want HR to work on more?
I think the key thing, if I'm honest, is around, we all have a strong, I'd like to think we have a strong talent pool, but how do we ensure we are maximizing the retention of those individuals that we have? And I think when we look at talent, we need to really look at it through that diversity lens. So using your data to ensure you're establishing how, on average, what is the retention of our female talent in comparison to male talent? When you intercept that with race and ethnicity, does that change? And why does that change? At what and in law, it is simpler because we have PQEs in terms of post-qualification experience as a lawyer, so we can see where there are peaks and troughs, and there wouldn't be any surprises that you can see where a bit of a drop-off would be, for instance, in women, where it's the stage where they go to thinking about having a family, and then it's looking at your policies. So do we have policies that are supporting family working? And oftentimes you can look at that from the lens of women, but actually if we look at it in terms of the family offering, so our paternity leave, our shared parental leave, as you enhance that, actually you inadvertently enhance the approach for women. And it's how do we look at some of those retention strategies and really apply that diversity and inclusion lens. And dare I say that I think since the 2020, there has been a lot more of that. But I think historically, I have seen that HR teams work, but the D&I piece was a silo to it, and it was a bit of an add-on. We are definitely a lot more integrated, and I think that will get better business outcomes if we're able to show that, because actually it's not around recruiting diverse talent, but it's around recruiting them and hearing of their experiences, which is different, and in creating a culture. And so I think it's around applying that D&I lens across all work streams and it being a focal point. So making sure there is a D&I in your working groups that you've established, in your leadership meetings, in your board paper writings that you're doing, it should all have a D&I piece that it is looking at it from that lens, because it provides a different perspective, and the business approach you would take for it if you didn't look at it from that lens, I dare I say, would be slightly different. And I think it's important that we consider that.
Absolutely. When we bring new people in, we create new cultures, and you can't just expect to bring diverse people in and then be like, oh yeah, okay, so be okay with this dominant culture and you know, experience a sense of belonging in something that, you know, you already may not have. It's so important that, yeah, we are, I think what you said there, hearing, not just listening, but like hearing their experiences. It's a different level, isn't it, to fully really understand and retain and take in and take action on someone's lived experience. So yeah,
and
thank
I
you.
think, if I may add, Vicky, I think it's important that we equip leaders, because the talent, the younger talent coming in now, they expect more. And I think that expectation that has changed, we HR, ED&I are responsible for equipping our business with closing that gap, the skills and training gap, and what that is now required in terms of supporting and nurturing diverse talent and what that looks like. I think the intent is there, but there is a real skills gap that is missing, and that they don't know how. And it's a real vulnerability to say, you know what, I don't know. There's someone who's neurodiverse in my team. What does that mean? How do I support them? And it's really getting us as HR and EDI really need to support with that, because what's going to happen is assumptions are going to be made around the senior leaders who are actually really well intended to make good decisions, but it's actually lack of experience and knowledge that is creating those gaps and, dare I say, employee relations issues.
Yeah, absolutely. That vulnerability is so key for addressing EDI issues, and you can't underestimate the value in being able to say, oh, I don't understand, but I would like to. Absolutely. Kate, coming back to you. What sort of processes have you implemented at Praetura HR department, and have you tried to make EDI become a bigger focus, and what have you done to do that?
Great question. I think just wanted to pick up on two things there. One that Combo said and one that Justina said. It is about stakeholders, so that's massive. And about those policies as well, and really looking at those policies that are attracting people in. So it's not just about trying to find a diverse talent pool, it's about creating an environment in which a diverse talent pool would like to come and work in. So looking at those, you know, looking at your family policies and making sure they are diverse and inclusive for everybody, and, you know, that they make it realistic for you to attract a diverse range of people, you know, so that they've got the support that they need once they're in. But I think it's definitely about engagement and education, especially with those senior stakeholders, and about their understanding. You know, we are a smaller business. We don't have separate functions. We don't have an ED&I team. We have a people team that covers all bases, but we are not the ones managing, leading every individual across the business. So it's got to be about education and engagement of those stakeholders, the leadership team, the managers, and raising their awareness, raising their understanding. And in terms of sort of making sure that ED&I becomes a bigger focus of our policies, I think it's the other way around, that our policies focus on ED&I rather than trying to shoehorn them into our policies to make them feel that they're fair. It's about looking at every policy through a lens of ED&I and making sure that everything matches and it's intrinsically linked into everything we do. So we create that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like we it's really interesting when you've got teams that are covering more than one function and how you go deeply into that. But absolutely, it's about getting that support and that buy-in. And I think someone maybe just asked the same similar question in the chat around how do you get executive buy-in on these things. So yeah, if you're happy to sort of maybe, I know we're jumping the gun a little bit, but I'd love to. I mean, it feels like we're already on that thread. Maybe come to that question around, you know, how do we get our senior leaders to really champion this work?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've talked a lot about data, and data is important. You've got to be able to measure it. You've got to be able to show the information, and you've got to be able to commercialize it and look at how, you know, how those two things are linked and what the success is and how that works, especially, you know, using your data to provide that information, and sharing it regularly and talking about it, I think is hugely important. I know Justina's talked a lot about data as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. And Kate, you've got Report and Support, our reporting platform. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's been setting that up and using it? And then I think Tune's going to maybe play a bit of a video about it. So yeah, let us know how it's been going for you.
Definitely. So when we talk about how as a business can we show that we are supportive and that we want to provide a safe, inclusive environment for everybody, nothing does that more, I think, than providing a report and support platform and giving people an option to be able to find out education and information around topics such as bullying and harassment, to get more education, to really get information about those topics, but also to be able to provide you with incidents and examples and situations and feel like there is a safe place where they can report an incident and ask for help. I think that, it's really important. The rollout here has been really well received and really supported by the teams, and we've had some fantastic feedback just in terms of us engaging with that platform and providing it as an opportunity for people to share information.
Yeah, I think I've come from working in a partner that had the platform myself before I joined Culture Shift, and that you can't underestimate the power of that definition work that's on the support pages, because people often have a sense of something is wrong, but putting a word to it, being able to say it's this particular thing and that's why it's not okay, can be a bit more of a challenge. And so doing that work to educate people on actually this kind of behaviour does constitute bullying, or this kind of behaviour is a form of harassment, or this is discrimination, and being able to educate people so they can have a word and a name for it can be quite a powerful step for them to be able to then resolve the problem as well. So yeah, it's a big part of the journey, I think, for a lot of people who've experienced difficult behaviours in the workplace.
It's a great first step as well, like you say, whether it being a step of you've got, right, okay, here's some stepping stones to actually provide us with the information. And again, it removes a barrier, doesn't it? It gives you the information. It allows you to seek a bit of understanding before you then go and report.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So I think reverse mentoring has become really popular in quite a lot of organisations. And I think it does kind of echo back to that thing we were talking about really hearing other people's experiences. Obviously, it comes with a side, though, sort of making sure we're not giving people who've had marginalised experiences too much labour themselves. And I think there's always a carefulness we need to have with those sorts of schemes. But I've heard such glowing reviews for people who have been on the receiving end of the reverse mentoring, who have found it really invaluable to really hear and listen to those people's experiences. Have you had reverse mentoring programs, Kate or Justina, or had any experience of facilitating them?
So I was on the pilot of a reverse mentoring program before I actually moved into ED&I in 2018. And I was reverse mentoring our executive partner, which is like the equivalent of CEOs in many organizations. And it was specifically in regards to race and ethnicity. I was in the business development and marketing function, but focused on an international role. And essentially, I was just frustrated. There was lack of Black representation. And we had a Black History Month talk, and it felt like the Black Club. There wasn't much allyship, and I was frustrated. And I was really open with so essentially what started the reverse mentoring relationship is me emailing the partner and saying, I'm disappointed with the turnout for Black History Month event. And from there, I was asked if I wanted to be a pilot on the pilot of the reverse mentoring program. We were very open and honest. So for instance, in law, there's a lot around social mobility, and I have definitely come from a socially mobile background. I'm from South London, and so I was really conscious that I felt there was an immediate disconnect just by way of social mobility and the way we had both come, the different angles of walks of life. We closed those, and we removed labels from one another, and with that vulnerability, we were able to be honest and open. And I must say that it really, often as the underrepresented group, you can focus on the learning and the experience of those individuals. And I would challenge those who are from underrepresented groups to also think about the experience of the white man, because that definitely gave me an eye-opener, how scared and they don't want to get it wrong, and they feel so much pressure. And our relationship was instrumental to how we responded as an organization to Black Lives Matter, and me being really forthcoming with, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to say, and also the other side where they were saying, but Justine, if I get this wrong, stakes are high. So I think it really did provide the learning. And that went out to, we rolled out 2 other mainstream cohorts of reverse mentoring. And for instance, the director of facilities was aware of some of the barriers some members of her team were creating for my employee resource groups when they're trying to run initiatives. And she was then looking at it from a D&I lens. So it was really impactful for everyone to look at it at their role and the contribution they could make to make ED&I more impactful in the workplace and creating the culture that we want.
Yeah. Thank you. It's really insightful. And I think there's so many different connecting schemes now. So obviously we've got quite a lot of mentoring schemes, reverse mentoring schemes. I used to work on a sponsorship program. The idea there being that the sponsor was actually expected to open opportunities for the person they were sponsoring. And it was ran specifically for underrepresented groups. And it actually really helped people to get a foot in the door. So a couple of examples we had where someone said, I think I want to be a department head one day. And someone said, well, have you ever been involved in any finance committee work? Because that's an essential part of being a department head. And the person had been like, I've not had an opportunity to do that. So then she was able to shadow the finance committee person. And actually, like, bringing senior leaders into these activities opens doors in a way that often, like, if it's done peer-to-peer or if it's done external to the organization, you don't have that upward sort of access and trajectory. And so yeah, these programs are like absolutely essential.
Vicky, if I may add, I think one of the key difference, like with reverse mentoring, is the junior individual comes into that to share their experiences, and senior leaders use their sphere of influence to think about how they can take their learnings and make a positive difference in an organization. Sponsorship is proactively backing and using your influence to make a difference in the individual's career. And then obviously the co-mentoring, where it's a mutually mentoring relationship, where it could be where both parties are learning from one another. Now, by virtue of all of these programs, that does happen, but I think the measurable outcome is different for each of these schemes, just to answer the question in the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. Absolutely. There's definitely different benefits to different schemes, and why it's important to keep on doing different approaches and not just have a one size fits all. I think we're going to maybe go back to Tune to try the video again. So let's do that, and then we'll go to some further questions, I think, in the chat as well. I'd love to come back to our speakers and ask the questions more specifically now around what are you doing in your organisations to help create an inclusive and supportive workplace that tackles head-on bullying, discrimination and harassment and helps people to speak up? Combo, if I can come to you.
Yeah, sure. So for us, it's all about trying to make sure that we are living out our values, and we do that from the very beginning. So in terms of who we are hiring, we make sure that those are people who are culture carriers, who align with our mission and align with our values. And one of our key values is open, honest, always. So we make sure that at interview stage, we have an interview with peers across the business. So that's open to anyone who's interested in kind of supporting with that. We then take everyone through radical candor training. So it's all about how we can make sure that people are developing those relationships and then challenging directly, but it's in a psychologically safe environment because everyone kind of knows the rules of engagement. We also have a really flat structure as well. So the idea of you can speak to absolutely everyone within the organization, whether that is a member of the SLT or one of your managers, you can always approach anyone within the organization, and we kind of use Slack in that kind of way. We have lunch all together as a team as well. So we're brilliantly lucky to have a chef who makes lunch for us at 12. And the way that we've been intentional, even in terms of the table layout, so it's not kind of segregating people. It's kind of like that canteen style. We're all in there together. We get people to mix around. And as I said, we're a go-to-market team. So we encourage collaboration around different incentives. We also use disc profiling as well as a way for people to understand different personality types and also be open to how we all kind of accommodate and change our style in line with the differences that creates. In our workplace as well, we have a platform that allows everyone to be able to kind of nominate a charity throughout the different quarters that we will support. If there's a particular cause that an individual is interested in, then we encourage kind of bringing the community into our workplace. So it's all about, for example, some people were really interested in women in tech events. So we now provide a venue for them to be able to host their events. So we just kind of open it up so that the culture is kind of being created by every single person. So I loved that when Justina was talking around creating that inclusive organization where you invite diverse groups into the organization, but you realize that is creating the new culture. They're not just assimilating, and that's really important to us in the way that we operate. We also run a bi-weekly pulse survey as an opportunity for people to share their views, and that can be done anonymously, or they can do it as named, and then we respond to that feedback. And in cases where unfortunately anything like harassment has occurred, just going back to kind of Kate's approach, we do lead by transparency and that idea of open, honest, always. So we will share what we are going to follow up and what the outcomes are, and reiterate our kind of zero tolerance view on that, but also acknowledging the confidentiality that we have to maintain.
Thanks so much. There's loads you're doing there. That's absolutely fantastic. Kate, you already slightly kind of got into this with a little bit. We're talking about how you're using report and support, but is there anything else you'd like to add what you're up to?
Yeah, really similar in terms of some of the things that Combo's doing over there as well. It definitely starts from the top. It's definitely about leadership and driving those behaviours. It's a real big focus on our values. One of our values, our top value, is do the right thing. And we say that trumps all other values. So, regardless of what you're doing and for what purpose, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And we talk about that all the time. It's something that's discussed at every review, every one-to-one. We talk about behaviours. We talk about, that sits alongside your performance. Your behaviour is more important than that, and it's discussed at every opportunity. And we try and provide safe spaces. We have a task force, an employee voice, an opportunity for people to talk, to feedback. They have representatives. We do pulse surveys as well. We ask for feedback. We provide multiple different ways of providing feedback, just to try and capture as much as we can, and again, we're transparent about the action that we will take on the back of that feedback. Report and support is just one element of those options.
Absolutely, and so it should be, and that's where my role, plays an important part in the work we do, which is like, you can't just have report and support and be like, that's brilliant harassment done. It absolutely needs to be part of a scheme of work that is about, all of the prevention, response, and workplace culture. piece. So yeah, and Justina, coming to you, what's you've been doing at Source and Made to sort of directly address bullying, discrimination, and harassment?
Well, if I just take a slightly different approach to that, we've been doing something to change the culture in regards to opening up, creating a culture where people feel open to just raise issues and concerns. So we've been working with our learning and development team. We are rolling out a firm-wide training program, which is around everyday inclusion. It focuses on two things: equipping people to calling the contribution of others, and calling, create a culture of calling in, and then speaking up around things that they see, witness, hear, or just sense themselves. And this is, we believe, an important part to the number of things that Combo and Kate have mentioned, because essentially, if we can get to a place where there isn't the formality and actually you witness something, you see something take place and you just call it out there and then, it creates a culture where actually things don't need to escalate, and actually we're creating and people are more mindful. And the key part of that training program is, how do I respond when I am the culprit? I've been called out on something, and the whole premise of the training program is we start on the base of no intent. So it kind of removes that fear factor of we're assuming a malicious intention there, but actually it's coming from a good place and something has gone wrong. Now, obviously we do know there are instances where that is not the case, but we want to start there, because I would say a high proportion of those times is where it does start from. So how do we address those so that we can remove the need for HR involvement, but actually equip our people with the skills to be able to navigate and work in a very diverse environment? And an example of that, for instance, could be that we planned a social and it falls during Ramadan. Now, you could just kind of sit there and think, that's not really cool. Or you could just speak to someone and say, look, we've planned this event during Ramadan. Perhaps we could either move the date, or if it doesn't work, could we look at how we do something post-Ramadan and perhaps celebrate Eid and bring in everyone? So it's just really, and these are things that when you're looking at a busy schedule, it can be an oversight. Ramadan is not top front of mind, but it's allowing for those things. Or it might be the calling in piece, where you recognize there's a certain individual who hasn't spoken in a meeting, and inviting them to come in and say, hey, we haven't heard from you. Do you have anything to say that you'd like to contribute? When people are speaking on top of each other, can you pause, think, actually, it's my voice that's been speaking. Let me allow someone else in. So it's really around, we're doing a bit to try and change the culture at the firm to equip people with the skills. And we're working with a team of psychologists. We're doing surveying people before the start of the program and at the end to really measure the change. And it's a 2-stage program. So one is a workshop for 2 hours. And then the second piece is a clinic where you come back and you tell us how you found practicing the techniques and tools and what's been uncomfortable and how we can equip you with those skills. And hierarchy has been something that's been mentioned. It's easy to call out people who are peers, but calling out senior individuals is more tricky. But the good thing with this program, we have run it for everyone all together. So we've got our senior leaders all the way down to the most junior members, cleaning team, absolutely everyone is receiving the same program. So they're aware of the benchmark that we're setting for the firm.
And are people mixed into those training sessions as well?
Mixed. Yes, they're mixed.
Nice.
And that is intentional. And the clinic, so the workshops are by your department. So the training is happening at the departmental level, but the clinics are mixed. So it can be cross teams. And that the reason for that is we want each other to hear the different experiences and challenges they are facing, because they will be different in different departments. So it could be someone in finance saying, someone sent me a snotty email and I felt it was because they were senior, whilst that senior person is saying, actually, I was just time poor and my manners got the better of me and I just dropped etiquette. And so that learning is happening, that the assumption of that person is rude, this person is really busy, actually spending topping and tailing my emails with just simple etiquette and niceties goes a long way when you're asking a junior member to do something, and a quick reply, thank you. doesn't cost you anything, it goes a long way. So it's just those type of things. We're trying to really close down those barriers.
Yeah, culture and behaviour, like there's just key place to target. It sounds like a fantastic scheme. Thanks for sharing, Justina. So we've got a few minutes left, and I'd quite like to come back to some of the questions in the chat, if that's okay. So we had one earlier where someone said, it'd be good to understand different organisations' ED&I impact frameworks. Are you aligning with the UN Sustainable Development Goals to drive impact on social cultural level? Is there anyone who's desperate to take that first?
I can kick off because we are measuring against the SDGs. So as a firm, we've kind of set ourselves which of the SDG goals we want to align ourselves with in terms of priority areas, and then using their framework, which is extremely substantive, but it's looking within them and thinking which ones can we achieve, and you've got to align those to your business goals. So even when we set up the SDG goals that we want to kind of focus on, those are ones where we looked at what is it we're already doing. And to Kate's point, in terms of commercial value, there's no point setting yourself these goals that just don't align, and all it seems is a bit of a cost that we're driving to the business, because we know when there's just rough times, it's the first thing to go. So it's really aligning it to your business in terms of net zero. What is it we want to achieve? What are the knock-on effects of that in a positive way? And I think a key thing that is helping measure your impact is your stakeholders. And that stakeholder, our people are at the top of that food chain now, and then thinking of your clients. And they are equally under the same pressures as us in terms of ED&I and the whole responsible business piece. We've all got to do business responsibly. And what that looks like is different depending on the sectors in terms of our pressure points, and the push and pull levers are different. But if you align them to the SDGs, I do think it's quite easy to then feed back to the business, who are then reporting to boards. And if you're FTSE listed company, they obviously have obligations that they need to report to, and it just helps simplify and make it easier. So that's something we're doing as a firm, not because we need to do it, because actually we're a partnership. But it's good that we are advising our clients on these matters, that we're showing that we are proactive in the same expectations our clients have, that we too are driving them internally. And I would say that's a key point. If you're advising clients on something, you've got to be walking the talk yourself. Before, you can't be expecting something of an external of your supplier, but you're not doing it yourself. You've really got to align those.
Absolutely. And Kate, is there anything you'd like to add on that question?
Just to say, we're in a similar process. So, we are looking at we're a finance business, so we're looking at what's expected of the people, our clients, our banks that we work with. We're looking at all of those things and trying to align our approach in a similar way that Justina's just mentioned. So it's not currently something that we are, required to do, but it's something that we want to do, but we want to get there before we have to, because this is, it's the way our business wants to run. So we're good business chartered. We have the accreditation. We're working through the goals for them, and then the next stage is to move on and to progress that.
Thanks. And Combo, anything from you in terms of SafetyCulture? Obviously, slightly smaller organisation, so different context for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, so for us, because we are kind of still at that scale up phase, and we're opening new territories and kind of establishing what our remit is going to be and what diversity and inclusion and equity looks like in each of those areas. So instead of kind of going with the UN goals per se and sort of saying this is what we are aligned to, it's kind of using the insight from our teams. What do they feel resonates with them? How do they want us to do business? What matters to us? And kind of then focusing on that, which automatically does end up aligning with the UN goals, but we haven't sort of articulated that as our mission at the moment. It's more, what do we want our legacy to be? What does sustainable look like for us? How do we operate with our customers? How do we support them to achieve those goals?
Yeah, great, thank you. So final question that we have is around Someone is interested to hear views on how ED&I and HR partnerships can think about organisational engagement around risk. So incidences where an organisation is making a decision between ED&I and being adaptable or tailored in HR when holding this up against organisational risk, e.g. like responding to reputational risk, which we see a lot when it comes to like high profile cases around bullying and harassment. So yeah, what are the kind of like collaborative working efforts? Have any of you got experience of the teams having to come together to do that?
I've been doing some work on that in regards to targets. So a lot of organizations have set themselves either gender or ethnicity targets. But at the same time, there could be things that are going on within the organization that could not be fully supportive of the target that's been set. And it's how do you, an example, just to, and this isn't one for Slaughter and May, but just to kind of bring it to life, could be, you've set yourself a gender target, and law firms announce partner promotions every year. And the partner promotions could be that you've got 2 male candidates and 1 female. And so inadvertently, you set yourself the target, but the murmurs and actually internally are really strong. And so you go out with that announcement, and there's a lot of backlash in terms of you set yourself a target, but you're missing it. And then people internally are not bought into it. So what can we do? And this is something that is close to my heart. I believe organizations are well intended when they set targets, and they aren't quotas, they are targets. But it's important that we don't just think about the target, but we think about all the work and activity that is going to come alongside that. Yeah. Sometimes our senior leaders can be concerned around what's going on externally in the environment, and that can be a key influencer to ambitious plans that they have. But we've got to think about the size of our HR teams and EDI teams with the commitments that we're giving ourselves. So we're not going to fall flat on our faces, but actually it's something that's ambitious and stretched, but it is manageable for the somewhat small teams that need to deliver these things. Because rolling out a talent management program, and for these things to take effect, to see the change, takes several years. And we need to bear that in mind when we're setting ourselves these pieces, because it can have a reputational knock-on effect when it doesn't appear that they are genuine. And they are, but it's just small teams. Kate's given the example, it's ED&I is embedded within HR. So that's one team looking at all those strands, and dare I say a few people considering it and dealing with employee relation issues and all other things, firefighting, but also looking at the external, and it is a challenge. I think resource is probably a key factor that impacts that risk and heightens that risk exposure, actually, by us just trying to do the best we can with the limited resource we have. Kate, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, we've reached... Kate's very much in agreement, and we've reached 11 o'clock, so I'm going to have to draw us to a close there, unfortunately. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about resources. I think that's another hour-long webinar, so maybe we should get on with booking that. But thank you all so much, Kate, Combo, Justina. Like, it's been a really interesting conversation. It's been a pleasure to host. We've had a very specific question in the chat from Em, but perhaps, Em, if it was okay to contact Justina directly about that programme, if that's okay with you, Justina, just to answer that question, that would be great. So thank you all so much for joining us. We've been Culture Shift, and this has been a really interesting conversation, and we hope to have many more continued with you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.